Hi, I don't usually do this and come on with no notice. And it's not that I have any shocking breaking news, but there's so much going on. I'm trying to figure out why. What is happening is becoming more and more obvious. Whether Deshaun Watson is coming to Cleveland or not, the Cleveland Browns have totally broken ways with Baker Mayfield. There's just no explanation that I can think of why there was this sudden fall from grace. And that's just what I want to chat about just a little bit, because I have no answers. I'm not an inside guy. I don't break stories. I'm not one of those guys who anyone of any importance or significance talks to. But as a business person and as a person who casually watches sports and is interested in the business of sports, it's really an intriguing process. Here's what we do know and what we've wondered about in the past. Probably the biggest question that got asked last year, when things went from really good the year before to not good this past year, was why is Baker Mayfield still playing? And I mean, it was probably the most commonly asked question, and it was answered in a number of ways. The Browns organization said, well, it's not his throwing arm, and we believe that he still gives us the best chance of winning, which doesn't mean a hell of a lot, because Nick Mullins and Case Keenum would give you virtually no chance of winning. Case Keenum because he has no arm left, if he ever had much of one, and Nick Mullins because, well, he's a career third string kind of guy who started 1 year of his life and throws a tremendous number of interceptions. And you know how much Kevin Stefanski can't stand interceptions. So it was left to the fans to ponder, why is a guy who's hurting as badly as this, who's working with 3 concurrent injuries, why is the organization allowing him to play? He was a first-round overall pick in a draft. He was the guy who led them to the playoffs the year before. Why are they letting him perhaps get additional damage? And the only answer now, looking at it where we are at today, is that the Browns never considered Baker Mayfield the long-term answer for Cleveland. But the interesting thing is, why just shortly, a matter of weeks ago, did Andrew Berry step out in front of the microphone and say, yeah, Baker Mayfield's the guy for 2022? Why would he have said that? Hi, Peter. It's nice to see you in the chat. We understand that Andrew Berry did not draft Baker Mayfield. I get that. But if there was a belief within the organization that he was just the wrong guy, certainly never came up in a 12-5 season, and we started out the season and Baker had completed 40 of his first 49 passes, and we certainly didn't hear anything about that. But then all of a sudden, it's like something at the top, and by the top I mean Jimmy Haslam, all the way down into the front office, that this realization somehow came to a group of men simultaneously that Baker Mayfield was not the future guy for this franchise. It's confusing to me on a number of levels. The first is how the Browns have handled this situation. First of all, you don't go off and say that a guy is going to be your quarterback for 2022 and then turn around and go out and try to find another quarterback. We're not sure exactly why this happened and what the timing is, but it surely would make any player who was playing for that organization not want to believe what was being told to them. I mean, it would be the worst way to run any business, not just a football team, but any business. With that said, the Browns can do whatever they want. Jimmy Haslam can do whatever he wants. He owns the team. Another thing that's really interesting is that it always appeared that Baker Mayfield did not have everybody at his side. It seemed some guys were ambivalent and silent, didn't say very much one way or another. Other people had his back, and other people decidedly chose Odell Beckham Jr. over Baker Mayfield in a spat, in an argument. What we still haven't discovered is whether Baker Mayfield was the reason why the scheme wasn't working, or was the scheme not working because it's limited, or was it because the men executing the scheme were limited? These are all things that are swimming around my head right now. There's so many possibilities. One thing I want to say is this. There are people tweeting things that really don't get to the heart of the matter. And if it is, in fact, a long shot that the Browns would corral Deshaun Watson as their quarterback, the chance that they're taking with their own credibility by not only going after a player with a lot of question marks next to his name for personal reasons, but also an outright public admission now that they're hunting for a quarterback. If it doesn't come through, you know that they're going to have to do something, because what's the motivation for Baker Mayfield to play another year in Cleveland under these set of circumstances, except to try to establish himself so he can get paid better as a free agent? But what makes anybody think that anybody in Cleveland is going to do that much for Baker Mayfield based upon the attitude of the front office and having lied, in essence, about him being a quarterback in 2022? I mean, they clearly can't want him back and be doing what they're doing. And at the same time, Baker Mayfield couldn't possibly feel like he would be enthused about coming back for 1 year to a team who clearly doesn't think highly of him. So it leaves me with all of these questions, and as usual, no answers. The Browns allegedly have a plane that's going to arrive around 3 o'clock in Houston, yada, yada, yada. And now the 49ers are allegedly in on the talks for Deshaun Watson, although other people within NFL circles are saying that that is not true. I don't have answers for you. The real questions are, whose decision is this ultimately? And it's Jimmy Haslam's. And one thing we can say that this is being handled very poorly. Whatever it is that they're doing is being handled in an excruciatingly poor way, reminiscent of Jimmy Haslam. Now, you have to believe that the front office and Haslam are in step. They're all three represented, the coach, the general manager, and the owner in this meeting. So obviously, they're all of a mind. Although I can't be sure that because their employment depends on it, that they're just not taking another flyer with Jimmy like Jimmy did with Johnny Manziel. It makes you not wonder who's running the ship, but when you see something being handled this poorly, it makes me think about Jimmy Haslam a lot. And we know that Jimmy Haslam is a scoundrel. We know that from a business perspective, he is unethical, long before he owned a football team. So it all appears to be very strange to me. Now, I can put some sequences together and try to guess, but I mean, it would be so much more professional if the Cleveland Browns had silently gone about their business if they felt that Baker Mayfield wasn't their guy. And you can see I'm not angry. This is not a personal event. I mean, Baker Mayfield, I've kind of gone back and done a lot of reflecting, and Is he everything that a number one overall you'd want to be? No. But I mean, that's been the case with a lot of number one overall quarterbacks who haven't really amounted to what the teams who drafted them hoped they would. But in a lot of those cases, the same thing happened to those quarterbacks that happened to Baker Mayfield, which is that he didn't have a really good wide receiving core, or the core that he had was really beaten up, or that the team didn't have the kind of depth at the positions that were necessary in the pass catching, depth of the roster. The fact that he had a good year and a bad year back to back, maybe some of the people in the front office said, you can look at some of the quarterbacks in the past who were really upfront, straight out winners, and they didn't have up and down like this. But it's kind of hard with Baker Mayfield knowing he had 3 different coaches in 4 years. From my perspective, I'd say that Baker Mayfield, it wasn't that he didn't pick up on the scheme. My question is the scheme really worthy of going to a Super Bowl in and of itself? I mean, if you put somebody like Deshaun Watson in charge of this offense, would this scheme look any better? Now, we're getting new wide receivers. We've already got one, all right? And we can see that the Browns are positioning themselves. J.C. Treader is gone, and I feel badly about that. Mac Wilson is gone, and I don't feel bad about that. But they are going to free up more space as we move forward. There are obviously moves that they want to make. I would be the first to admit that the window hasn't been cracked for success in Cleveland since they came back as a franchise. All right? And that is that. I'm reading what Rick May is putting up here, and I know that Watson still has the civil suits hanging over him, but it was like the story that broke the other day, is that the Browns knew about something before it happened. I mean, you wonder what the owners know and what they don't know, okay? If the NFL is going to suspend him, do the owners know that? Is this all contingent upon the deals that they're presenting to the Houston Texans? I mean, we can't know that. I can't know that. But I assume that people who are in the front offices of NFL teams know a hell of a lot more about what the NFL is planning to do with Deshaun Watson than I would. Then there's always the personal fear within me is that they would lie to the Browns about that and then make him ineligible to play if the Browns received him. Is Deshaun Watson better than Baker Mayfield? I mean, here we go again. Deshaun Watson was described when he came out of Clemson as a superhero. He was described as a Michael Jordan-esque, once-in-a-generation guy by his head coach at Clemson. That would be Dabo Swinney, I believe. And that teams would be sorry if they didn't draft him. Well, he ends up in Houston. Now, I want to point out to you that some of the teams that are the worst teams in the NFL, the Browns included, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Houston Texans, are all expansion teams. And this plays into this to some degree. I mean, you get off to a bad start and things have a tendency to keep rolling in that direction. People do not take these teams seriously. And the Texans, for all of the success that Deshaun Watson had, he did have DeAndre Hopkins. He did have weapons at his disposal. The team didn't win. They weren't good. And I know that they didn't have the kind of depth at the positions that they needed to have, the kind of roster that it takes to win a Super Bowl. I keep asking myself, why would Deshaun Watson want to come to Cleveland in a circumstance where Cleveland is trying to put together and cobble together a group of players when he could be talking to people who already have assembled better package of players and a roster than the Cleveland Browns. I don't have an answer for that either. Like I told you, all questions and no answers. Do I think he's better than Baker Mayfield? Yeah, I think that from a size perspective, his arm talent, his accuracy, yes. I think, and again, these are things I didn't want to talk about the other day on the show because there was no absolute confirmation that the Browns were going to do this, that, or the other. There was a lot of rumor and innuendo, which again is the fault of the organization. The fact that they're trying to say something, the Browns organization as a whole is working behind closed doors, and I don't expect them to be telling the public what they're up to, but at the same time, it's like they tried to put Baker Mayfield to sleep and just go, okay, you stay asleep over there, and if we need you, we'll wake you up. If not, you shuffle off to not even Buffalo, shuffle off the mortal coil. I don't see that this is being handled in a responsible way. And I don't understand if you have to drop a bunch of number one picks with this window being open. This could be the most catastrophic move in the history of the Cleveland Browns. It has all the makings of possible dynamite. Because if you give up and you just, you mortgage your future in essence by giving away a bunch of draft picks that just stops your progress to bring in a guy who's a quarterback, who's a good quarterback, and you're not there roster-wise yet, there's no time left. You can't build by the draft then. And then who is going to come to Cleveland if it doesn't work out with Desean Watson? What happens then? I mean, then your free agents are going, why would I want to go there? It's depleted. I'm not a high risk kind of guy. And I think that people who watch the show here know that. I tend to play my cards very closely, and I'm very private about what I would say. I mean, it's amazing. I've been on for 19 years, and there's not, anybody who knows a goddamn thing about me personally. And you won't. I play cards very close to my chest. That's my nature. But the Browns obviously wanted the world to know that they were checking out Watson. And that was their way of backing off their public stance that Baker was the guy for 2022. It's certainly a bad way of doing it, okay? But that's what they've done. So is this a situation where Jimmy Haslam can't stand prosperity? Do you build a team up to a certain point and find a way to fuck it up? I say 50% chance yes. Because that guy's a doofotch. He could fuck anything up. He could fuck up a wet dream. That I can tell you. Because I've worked for people like him. On the other side, the other 50% is, are you going to have enough pieces by the time this guy would be able to play to be able to overcome his rust from not having played for over a year, B, the backlash that's going to come from the media all over the country, because what you don't understand, and nobody will seemingly understand, is that the Browns will always be looked upon as the worst franchise in the NFL now. And this has been going on now for 20 years. All right. And honestly, I have to tell you that if the play doesn't work out, it is the flakiest thing I ever heard in my life, because you could be using your draft picks to get more wide receivers, better defensive pass rushers, better offensive linemen, or whatever. And any goddamn quarterback could come out and even have a chance to get you in the first round. Because Pittsburgh, if you're worth a damn, you're going to beat them twice. And Baltimore, God forbid, if something were to happen to Lamar Jackson, you could beat them once or twice. You could find yourself squeaking in at 10-7 with an average quarterback. So why would you put all of this on the line now? And Baker Mayfield, no matter what the people who don't like him for whatever reason personally, and I'll get to that in a minute, you know that he could easily get into the playoffs and sneak in with a 10-7 record. Not going to win a Super Bowl. All right. I'll take your side of the argument that it's not good enough. And that the front office obviously has come of the belief that Baker Mayfield is not good enough to get this done. And now it's definite that he's not good enough to get it done in Cleveland because he isn't going to be here. And there's no reason why he should. If I were Baker Mayfield, if you were Baker Mayfield, and this is what happened, you would not re-sign up for more of this kind of punishment. There's no reason for it. The notion of what's wrong with Baker Mayfield goes beyond what he has done on a football field. He has rubbed people the wrong way for whatever reason or however he's done it. And whatever the circumstance might be, it has worked its way into the ownership and the front office of the team. So much so that they're willing on one season of injury, of bad performance, to cast him to the winds. There has to be more to Baker Mayfield's relationship inside that organization than what we know as well. So if I'm going to, on the one hand, say it's very possible that Jimmy Haslam, being the flake and dishonest guy that he is really the driving force of this, I have to look at the other side of the equation too and say, the crotch grabber, Baker Mayfield is a guy who can rub people the wrong way. And if he rubbed people the wrong way, and that would incorporate people like Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry, who said, I don't understand why I'm not seeing the ball more often. If he has left his teammates thinking that Baker doesn't see the field, doesn't see them open or whatever. I've looked at the film. It didn't look like the receivers were getting very open to me. And I've seen a lot of the game film, and it doesn't look real good. But things become more personal when personal shit is involved. And I'm just wondering how many players in that locker room has he rubbed the wrong way? We talked about John Johnson the third, that he was coming out and saying things that didn't appear to be in the role that he was supposed to be playing as the senior diplomat on the team, a guy who was a real pro's pro. It didn't come off that way. It came off that he was not on the same page, and he played like he wasn't on the same page. There were effort problems out on the field. Clearly, Rashard Higgins, who we knew was capable of doing better, didn't even care if he just walked off sides. He didn't care. There was a lack of discipline. In the pass coverages, people getting burned deep, safeties not reacting to deep patterns for no good reason, penalties that for no good reason would happen, Ronnie Harrison just slugging people in the backs of their heads, thinking that the referees wouldn't see it, or whatever the situation was, a lot of stupid penalties, which really is the exact antithesis of what the characteristically anal Kevin Stefanski would call for in a football team. It's almost as if the Cleveland Browns organization as a whole looked at the situation and simultaneously pointed their fingers at Baker Mayfield and said, this is the common denominator of what has made this team from a very efficient team 2 years ago into the team that just seemingly is not efficient at all. We would see Myles Garrett just, jumping off sides, guessing the snap count, people lining up off sides. I can't tell you how many times we saw that. People lined up in the wrong place. I can't tell you how many times we saw that. And peculiar play calls that Kevin Stefanski would not defend. He would only say, that was a bad call on my part. A lot of things. Yeah, Mark Ross, Clowney throwing a shoe. Yeah, I mean, weird things that didn't make any sense whatsoever, except for the team that had lost their composure. So, what am I to tell you? There's obviously, and was, and still is, a component in that locker room that doesn't believe in something. And obviously, the front office has decided that they don't believe in Baker Mayfield. That may be the case. But what if they don't believe in Kevin Stefanski and his scheme? What if they don't play the defensive scheme well because they're not into Joe Woods? There's any number of possibilities. You can't tell me that a defensive coordinator can't line up his guys and have players who are, we're not talking about attention to detail where the fucking line of scrimmage is. We're talking about lining up, not in a neutral zone. Those types of things indicate wandering minds of players, A, being somewhere else, and B, ending up someplace else, waiting for their contracts to expire so they can go to another destination. So I don't have answers, just these questions. And as all of this comes out today in more detail and tomorrow, because allegedly they say that Deshaun Watson is really wanting to make a decision within the next 24 hours. That's all well and good. Are the Browns the last team that he's going to be talking to? The second to last team? We have no hints as far as that's concerned. And we've heard nothing at all from the Browns front office about this, except they're allowing the press to eat Baker Mayfield alive. My conclusion, when I put all the facts together, the Browns didn't care whether Baker Mayfield played injured or not. They didn't have an interest in bringing him back from the beginning. I don't know why, but as you put a puzzle together and you start having time to look at the disparate pieces, you say, yeah, well, this one goes here and this one goes here. It made no sense to me when a guy who even if it was in a non-throwing arm, for God's sakes, if he had a tear that required surgery, a broken bone, a fracture, and then he hurt his leg on top of that, that you would just never jeopardize. I mean, for as bizarre as the Lamar Jackson story is in Baltimore, the fact that Lamar Jackson just keeps passing on offers that the Ravens are putting in front of him. They didn't play Lamar Jackson when he hurt his foot. Whatever the hell he did to it, they didn't make him play. Now, Baker Mayfield wanted to go out and play, and they just obliged him and said, no problem at all, Bake, you go on out there, and maybe you'll hurt yourself worse. The only explanation is they didn't treat him as something in high esteem. They were ready to move on from him early on this past season. Something happened. So this is not something that just suddenly overtook the organization, although it seems that it's something that has, like fire, taken over the idiots on Twitter. These types of things have explanations. But the explanations cannot be had by pointing your finger at one person or another. It's putting together a lot of circumstances and looking back and saying, well, gosh, they didn't sign him to a contract this past year. They didn't want to. And it's like they let him devalue himself by playing hurt the way they let him play. It's not the act of an organization that wanted to have anything to do with the guy. And again, this is what I'm trying to get away from. Jimmy Haslam is a liar. We already know that. Andrew Berry, I'm not going to accuse because he's employed by Jimmy Haslam. Jimmy Haslam said, get Johnny Manziel, and the general manager had to do it or else get fired. Now, me, when I was told to do something stupid like that, when I was working for people, I got fired a couple of times for not following orders. But I would never smear my own reputation in the radio industry by doing things that would come back to haunt me later. So, I mean, Andrew Berry, if he's going to, it's hard enough to get into the inner circle, into a front office for an NFL team. And if that's a goal of Andrew Berry's, he's going to have to sit back and accept that this is what Jimmy Haslam wants. Now, has Jimmy Haslam been beaten on by Andrew Berry and DePodesta and all the other people in the analytics squad to get rid of Baker? Maybe. Maybe it's just easy that some people can, with the eye test, that they can say Baker Mayfield is just a bow wow like Sam Darnold. I don't see it that way. I don't see him that he's a clear-cut answer either. I don't see that either. So what I see is an organization that has lost interest in him, that wants to part ways with him, but didn't want to appear to be kicking a man when he was down, when in essence what the organization did was they led to his downward spiral by allowing him to play, and Baker's own ego pushing him back out on the field. The funny thing is, J.C. Tretter played hurt in almost every one of the 5 years he played in Cleveland, and he leaves a hero. He played hurt, and he could have been better on the field last year, but he was banged up. But he was a real man for gutting it out. But the same thing isn't true of Baker Mayfield, you see. He went out to gut it out, and it will be used against him in the biggest way possible. This is what makes me wonder about the organization. And believe me, there will be so much negative said about the Browns organization. Yep. And I know, Brian, I read the same thing. Watson wants to name his head coach. Well, I mean, that would be the ultimate now, wouldn't it? Be to drag Kevin Stefanski into a meeting, and then the next thing, once he's Watson, if he's a member of the Browns, say, oh, by the way, Kevin, you're fired. And then we'll be paying a guy for 4 years again or whatever. I mean, and the same thing that Haslam has done over and over again will have repeated itself. This time, not being in the public eye, but still being Jimmy Haslam. And you know that's where I'll go on the show. I'll go right after him. Because in essence, he's the guy on top. When you own something, you're the one accountable. You're the one responsible. You talk about accountability. Yeah, that's where accountability turns into something, important. And, and again, yeah, I mean, and that's what happens. The owner gets what the owner wants. That's the way it works. And this is exactly right. The whole thing has become a brouhaha. And I guess that is the fault of the organization for not plotting it out. And obviously, this time restraint on them And it looked like the Browns were going to be the patient ones in free agency. And now the wheels have come off and they're the same panicking organization who's so scared that they're going to become what they were, that they will become what they were. Talked about the Jaguars on the show yesterday. You realize what the Browns are on the verge of doing. They're on the verge of getting rid of a lot of assets for one guy. And you know that you know how much it took to get this roster back up to snuff after what Hugh Jackson and his group did? You realize? I mean, that was all the way back in what, 2016? Is that right? I mean, that's been 6 years, folks. And at the time, if you watched the program, and when Hugh did what he did, I said, you can add 5 years for the Browns to ever be successful. 5 years for every one of these blunders, and here we go again. Here we go again. You get Denzel Ward, you get Greedy Williams, you got Greg Newsome, thumbs up there. You know, now you got Amari Cooper, you know, thumbs up there. You got Nick Chubb, double thumbs up there. You got Kareem Hunt, double thumbs up there, although he was hurt last year. That's too bad. You got a third running back, and some teams don't even have one or two. That's great. But you got a bunch of slow-moving tight ends, and your scheme is archaic. That's not real good. It's just a confusion. And I think my biggest bad feeling that emanates from all of this is that how any Browns fan can derive any joy or satisfaction out of this, I have no idea. You get put on a side, and you're either on Baker's side, you know, you're a Baker bro, or you're a Baker hater. And this is the black and white, no gray world that we live in today. Putin's a genius. Putin's a murderer. We got to go in there and send our troops in. We got to stay out of it at all costs. There is no middle step. Got to wear a mask all the time? No, I'm never going to wear a mask. Everything is black and white. When the world is gray, there's nothing I'd love more than to have a quarterback to succeed and have the Cleveland Browns be in the Super Bowl. You think I've been doing this for 19 years just because of my health? I'm a fan. But to see fans deriving satisfaction from this conflict is as painful as the conflict itself. And it makes me realize that maybe that's the only interest that there is amongst a certain percentage of people regarding the Cleveland Browns. And I've always said it. The audience for this program, which is a little boutique podcast, I don't promote it. I spend no money. I make no money. This is non-monetized. This is as homegrown as it gets. And I did it all the way back starting in 2003. The concept was born. And I did it because I was having some health problems. And I said, boy, you know, there's some things that I'm not going to be able to do for a while. I better figure out something that would be of interest. And it's like, oh, wow. I've already got some equipment in here from the former radio stations that I owned. I could put this to use and do this thing they call podcasting. And yes, I was the first one, Northeast Ohio. Yes, this little boutique bullshit program. But I don't look for any reward for doing this. I want things to work. It kills me to think that there are a percentage of people who tune in only when we lose. And it is always confused the hell out of me. Now, it doesn't confuse me anymore. And I will not pander to a group of people. If I've done this 19 years with virtually no viewers, there's no reason to change. Again, I would rather get fired than lose my integrity. That's the way I'm built. I'm not going to sit there and cheer at this dysfunction that is going on around the team that I root for. I want a good ending. We're never going to get an explanation of exactly how or why it happened. And believe me, if Deshaun Watson were to decide to come to Cleveland, which I still don't think he's going to, because that would be the logical end for a totally fumbled, bumbled, messed up thing that the Browns front office and ownership is doing. That would be the way it would end for Jimmy Haslam, that he would drop a nuclear bomb once he started to succeed. Look at him. This is a guy who inherited something and is a shady practitioner, to say the least. We know that. We can't do anything about it. But I think a lot of fans are saying, well, if we bring in Deshaun Watson, I'm not going to cheer for the team anymore because, I support women. It's like, okay, you have the right to stop. I get that. But there's so many other reasons that people would want to stop. The one that would make me stop podcasting for the Cleveland Browns, like I've stopped doing it for the Cleveland Guardians, is that when a team is suicidal, when a team isn't trying to win, or it's just the whims of an owner, and it suits the NFL to have a scapegoat and to have a weak sister couple of franchises, and you're one of them, Haslam will never leave here because the NFL likes having him here. And you know something? In your own sordid, twisted way, the guys and gals who tune into this program only when the team loses, because I tend to be more animated when that happens, those people are no different than the NFL. You just want a weak sister franchise. You want something that you can just stomp on. Maybe you don't feel so good about yourselves. I don't know. Me personally, if it goes down that Deshaun Watson turns the Cleveland Browns down, and Baker Mayfield, who at that point would rightfully say, no thanks, and goes someplace else and gets traded, and the Browns bring in, Carr or another mediocre quarterback. Why should I continue doing this? What's the point if I don't even believe in the product that's being served up? At what point do I just say, ixnay? And then I'm sure those people who want to laugh at the Browns will tune into other boutique podcasting broadcasts. And they'll go someplace else or read the national press, or they'll listen to Skip Bayless, or they'll listen to whomever, and Colin Cowherd, and they'll get their dosage no matter who the quarterback of the Browns is, no matter what the Browns are. They'll be insulted on national television, and they can watch that. But that's what's going to chase me away from the Browns: bad decisions by management and things that I know in my heart. I'm 64. I'm going to be 65 in a few months. Not my first trip around the block. I know bad business decisions when I see them. I've seen them from very close up. I don't need to be in the war room in Cleveland. I don't need to, I can see the results of what they do, and it's catastrophic. They've consistently been catastrophic. Jimmy Haslam has consistently been catastrophic since he came into the league as an owner. That's a fact. You want to talk about Baker Mayfield's one bad year? You won't get an argument from me. It was a bad year. It was a really bad year, especially because our hopes were higher. That's nothing compared to Haslam's record. Are you kidding me? Sometimes you got to look a little deeper, folks. I mean, you might be happy thinking you're going to get this quarterback. Haslam will fuck it up. He's fucked everything else up. he'll fuck that up too. Well, I've taken up enough of your time and mine. And it's not that I want to report news and breaking this and breaking that and jump in and do 7-minute broadcasts. I want to at least have some kind of coherence about what I'm saying and what I'm saying on my program, so that I can sit here and say, if Desean Watson comes to Cleveland and chooses Cleveland, I'm going to say the magic words that other people refuse to say. If that happens, I was wrong. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. It's the people who just will never acknowledge that they're wrong who are the Jimmy Haslams of the world. They have the privilege, or they have, and the same thing that we can say about Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's made up his mind about stuff, and he's a one-dimensional guy, and you're not going to change his fucking mind come hell or high water. A lot of you folks are exactly the same way. I'm not interested in winning an argument. I'm not even interested in having an argument. The people who keep writing in comments on the program who want to argue with me, when I'm done trying to be nice, I just say, I think you're an angry person and you need to stop watching because you're really becoming agitated. Being agitated is normal on game day. When you watch a double reverse or a shuttle pass get intercepted by a line on game night or game day, when that kind of shit goes down on the field, yeah, I'm going to be emotional about it. But not now. I mean, in my everyday life, I want the Browns to win. I want the Browns to have good ownership. I want them to have good front office. I'm not here for that entertainment's sake. The entertainment I want to derive is not from this Twitter frenzy. It's from having a successful football team. And there will come a point where it's just apparent to me, especially now, when you're lined up the way we're lined up, and we actually have some good players on the field. If we manage to throw this down the shitter, then I'm not around for another rebuild. That I can tell you. I'm not around for that. And, with the Cleveland Cavaliers, I always use them as an example. They won last night, and boy, it was ugly. And it took everything, exhaustion from a back-to-back for the Clippers, the fact that 8 of their players weren't there, and the Cavaliers barely squeaked by in overtime. But when you lose LeBron James, with it, you lose all national identity. Nobody cared what happened to the Cavaliers once LeBron was gone. Wherever LeBron goes, whether it would be to Miami before or Los Angeles, now all the attention goes to those cities. And there's nobody left to watch the Cavaliers, and they're a forgotten franchise. I want to cheer for them because they're winning. They do show some heart, although they look worn down and beaten down to me. Their defense just isn't there. They look tired and broken. In a lot of ways they are, physically, but emotionally too. It's taken its toll. But how long does it take to come out from under losing LeBron James and everything that came with him, and then ending up with a wackazoid like Kyrie Irving, who's played for 2 teams since he played for Cleveland and has caused trouble everywhere he's gone? Look at all the people who played when LeBron was here, and now they've gone out to different places, and Cleveland was left cratered. And I say, hey, Darius Garland, although he's getting worn out and he's hurt in the back really bad, they're gutting it out. Jared Allen has said no to surgery. He wants to come back in 2 weeks. And Mobley, they moved him to center, and we know that he's 60 pounds, 70 pounds lighter than the people he played against, including Zubac last night. He scored 30 points. He's getting better as the season goes on. They moved him to center, and it's like, he's doing really well. That's something to cheer for. The Cavaliers organization has won a championship, and that, by golly, they found some blue chip young players. And if they could just draft a few more guys who are good role players, we could be a 500 plus team for a couple of years and get into these play-ins, get into the playoffs, and maybe make a little run for fun. That's all I ever expected was the Browns. If they could get to the playoffs, then maybe they'd have a chance to move on. We get there once, and then we're going to have to blow it up. Really strange. You know, and what actually, Scott, what you're saying here is true. You know, they put Corey Snyder on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and you remember what happened. 100 losses that year. And then Joe Carter ended up hitting a World Series winning home run for the Toronto Blue Jays. In the 70s, it was like coming off of a decade of greatness for the Browns. It was like, Bill Nelson's knee finally gave out, and it was Mike Phipps was the start of a real quick decline. And if it weren't for the hiring of my friend, Sam Rutigliano, the Browns would have really been lost. And it's amazing how much flack Sam took for no good reason. He had the faith in Brian Sipe that Forrest Gregg did not. Forrest Gregg ruined the Browns. All right. By the time Nick Skorich took over for Blanton Collier, I'll give you a little history lesson. You know, Skorich's last year, it was apparent things were going down. They wanted, got a rough and tough guy like Forrest Gregg. That'll really put it together in the Browns running game. The guy was a former offensive lineman, Hall of Famer. And our running game went to hell. When they brought Rutigliano on board, suddenly the people who were not performing started performing. The offensive line started blocking. Receivers started getting open, and we started getting new guys like Ozzie Newsome, and we started putting together some talent on the field. And that's how that became successful. But Brian Sipe was already, by that time, 27, 28 years old. And by the time he got to a point where he was 31, 32 years old, he started getting beaten up. Then we end up with Paul McDonald, who just never amounted to anything. And then we got Bernie Kosar, and then we put together a running game, but we had another myopic head coach who believed that his defense could win every game and not his offense. So we never had the big game-breaking kind of offensive wide receiver guys. And Bernie Kosar was eventually demoted by, Bill Belichick for diminishing, skills. And from Bill Belichick on forward, it was destruction of the Browns. Then they were wiped out of the league. And then they were, by name, given their name back, but never given a chance to create anything positive. Read history and see how the Browns were put together. Before you start putting your shit on Twitter, you young folks, honest to God, read about how fast they had to put the Browns front office together because the NFL protracted the bids out for such a long time that by the time the decision was made, what group was going to get in, it was too late. They didn't have all their positions filled, and the NFL didn't even let the Browns have the pick of anything except all the players that the other NFL teams wanted to get rid of. Think of it this way. You look at the Browns right now, and you look at the players who were the least consequential players. And like last year, it would have been the safety. The guy who came from the Vikings. Help me with his name. I've tried to put it out of my Sendejo. Imagine a roster full of Sendejos. That's what the Cleveland Browns were given when they came back in 1999. They were given the first overall pick. They picked Tim Couch, and they did not allow the Browns to have anything off of NFL rosters except what the other teams threw in the garbage. And I'm not exaggerating. That is a fact. And they couldn't recover, couldn't get out from under that. The Houston Texans had it so much better than the Cleveland Browns because NFL teams, had to give up quality players. If you compare the roster of the Texans' first year with the Browns' first year, it's no comparison, way better. The Browns had the sorriest roster of any team in the NFL. They were terrible. I watched every game because I was glad to have a team back. Fans fought hard to get a team back. They weren't arguing about Baker Mayfield back then. We were all rowing together trying to get a team back. We were going to support that team. And then the agony started when we realized, they're not getting any better. They're getting worse. It's just the revolving quarterback scenario. So excuse my generation if we look at this and kind of roll our eyes and go, here we go again. It's like we build up enough momentum. We have 1 year of bad injuries and we're just ready to wipe the slate clean and start all over again. And we might damn well be willing to give up a bunch of draft choices and the future solid build of this team for one guy who Dabo Sweeney thought is a Michael Jordan-esque guy. Ponder these things as you continue reading on in your social media life. And I'll be back again on Friday, and we'll talk about what direction this thing ultimately went to. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you again soon. Chill out, take it easy, and let's hope for the best. Until then, hasta la vista, Pastorheads. Bye-bye now.